Hey guys, your boy Jehuty here with another Tekken 7 video, and today we're talking about green ranks. More specifically, I've compiled my top 5 tips on how to get out of green ranks. And this video came about because over time people always ask me, oh, how did you get out of green ranks? How did you get out of yellow ranks? So I thought, why not go back, start afresh, and compile my tips and make a video series out of it. So that's what we're doing, especially because green ranks, and so they play by their own rules. So look into the description if you're watching this for a second time and you want to go to specific timestamps, and then without further ado, let's get into it. What I noticed while I was going back to green ranks is that people tend to get up the same way, so they form habits of how they get up, especially at the wall. So this is definitely a disadvantage because you become very predictable. But of course, it's also an advantage if you can predict that, oh, your opponent always gets up in this way, oh, your opponent doesn't get up. So there are ways to dealing with that. But first up, let's look at all the options you have whilst you're getting up. So some of the options you have at your disposal whilst lying on your back and your head being away from your opponent are, of course, the get up low kick by pressing 3. And then what you can also do is the get up mid kick, and that's by pressing 4. You can also do a toe kick, which is a low, by pressing down 3. You can also just press back to put a bit of distance between your opponent and block. You can press down back to get up immediately and block low. You can also press up and immediately back afterwards to just get up on the spot and block immediately. You can roll into the background by pressing 1. You can also roll into the foreground by pressing down 1. You can also decide to stay on the ground by pressing 1 and then pressing down afterwards, and you can also do that into the foreground as well. And yeah, these are all of the options you have whilst laying on your back. The times when you really have to be careful are when you're lying on your stomach, so you're lying face down, and especially when your head is facing the opponent in that moment. There are a lot of setups designed to launch you whilst you're trying to get up out of this position, and it's very disadvantageous for you, so be very careful and always notice when you keep getting clipped by such a setup. So what you also have at your disposal is something called taking off of the ground. So there's certain attacks which knock you down immediately on your back, but your legs are still up in the air. And by those attacks, you can press and hold the back input as you're falling down, and your character will roll back immediately. And then you put distance between him and the opponent can't pressure you anymore. And then what you also have is that when you're knocked down regularly, be it from an attack or from a launching combo, you can press, or better said, repeatedly press the one input as you're impacting onto the ground, and your character roll and get up immediately, so you can use that to your advantage. Of course, you can also tech when you're on the ground, so when you're lying on your back and your opponent hits you whilst you're on the ground, in the moment when you're hit, you can also press the one input to roll and get up immediately, so you roll to the side, of course. And that about sums it up for getting up. Remember, if you're getting clipped by the same stuff, it's time to change things up. You have so many different options. Do not be predictable, but if your opponent is predictable with his options of getting up, also exploit that. So next thing you want to do is get down your launching combos, right? So let's watch this clip where this guy got the opportunity to finish me off. It would have been a longer combo into rage art, and it now cost him the round because he just gave away that free damage, right? So what you want to do is you want to go into practice, and first up, let's look at this. We have this combo from Lee. It does 57 damage, kind of respectable, but what you want to do is you want to, of course, go for the bigger combo, right? And the bigger combo here is transfers all the way into the wall and gives a total of 92. Now we're also going to get down on how to practice your combos. So of course you want to get into the combos, and the combos you find them on the sample combos in practice mode, and you can of course have them demonstrated to you. You can also display them in the game whilst you're practicing them. That's very practical. And these are the combos for now which you should stick with. You have, for more technical characters, these so-called big boy combos. You shouldn't be attempting them at this point because it's better you're like more consistent and do 2 damage less than risk dropping it at this point. So bite off what you can chew. So another thing which I've realized in green ranks is that a lot of people drop their counter hit launchers or don't even attempt to do them when the move connects as a counter. So Lee here has a couple of his counter hit moves, and what you need to pay attention to is that you need to know what your character has for options as counter hit moves. So you can go online, check the counter hit moves, and what you want to do here is that once you know all of those moves, you want to go under settings, other settings, player counter hit, and set that to random. It's very important that it's random. And then you go through your various counter hit launchers and keep doing them, and then you have to be prepared that when it registers as a counter hit, that you execute the, of course, ideal combo afterwards very quickly. So yeah, that is the gist of it, and practicing that. Take your time. This does take a while to get used to it in the beginning, but then it will flow like any other combo. Then the last thing, of course, is the wall. There's not much to say about the walls. It's the same principle. You want to know what kind of wall combos you can do. Each character has about 2 or 3 effective wall combos. Learn the one which is most consistent at first, and then also keep in mind how far you are away from the wall when you're comboing into the wall, and what you can use afterwards. So just keep at it, rinse, repeat, and it should come over time. So one of the characteristics of green ranks is that people tend to throw out a whole lot of attacks and also pressure you with a lot of quick attacks. And normally people would say that, oh, you know, when you're dealing with pressure, just sidestep or sidewalk and launch that. But in the beginning it's kind of difficult to do that, especially because stepping in this game has been nerfed. But what you can do is that you can, of course, block the first attack and then quickly backdash by pressing back and executing your Power Crush immediately. So Power Crush is a new mechanic which was introduced in Tekken 7, and it lets you armor through enemies' attacks while taking a bit of damage yourself. And this of course can get you out of a couple of tricky situations. Your other option which you have at your disposal is a generic down jab. So you can press either down 1 or down 2 depending on the character, and what you do is you get a generic down jab, also known as a dick jab. And this is good because it goes underneath highs, it comes out relatively quick, and the opponent is stopped dead in their tracks in most cases when they have quick attacks. So what will happen is that you will have a bit of distance and you can then reposition yourself afterwards. Anyway, on to the next tip. Now let's talk about rage arts, or specifically how not to use them. And one of the things I realized in green ranks is that a lot of people use this as a panic tool. And what you have in the background is a Devil Gym player who I faced, and he actually did a very good job. He could execute electrics, he had good movement, he understood the game actually quite well. However, whenever he was low on health, he would resort to pressing the rage art button, and yeah, he would panic with that, and every time he would get launched, and that was the end of that. And he did this in every single round. So when it comes to rage art, there are 2 things you have to take away for yourself. First thing is that if you can't bring yourself to be disciplined about using it, and you keep using it as a panic button, then it may be good to get rid of the button altogether. So what you do is you go under settings, controller settings, and you disable that there's even an input for rage art. And what you then have is that you have to manually input the rage arts. But now, since they're no longer simple one press buttons but a combination of buttons, you're going to be more cautious and have to actively think when you're using rage art. And of course you can also find your manual input for your rage art under your move list, and it's the very first one at the very top. If you're having problems rationalizing this away, why you should manually input it, think of it like this. You manually put in your rage drive as well. So you should also be able to manually input your rage art. And then yeah, the next thing we're looking at is how your opponent uses their rage art. In many cases in green ranks, your opponent really just throws out the rage art. So what you want to do is you want to bait them into using it by running toward them and just blocking immediately. And there's a high likelihood that they'll just throw it out, or they can also do it in pressure situations when they're at the wall. So use quick and short attacks like jab 1 or 2 to bait them out, and then just block it and then punish them for it. So one of the fundamentals of Tekken is movement and whiff punishing. So to explain that is, under movement we mean anything that has to do with spacing. You creating distance between you and your opponent. So that can be stepping into the background, it can be moving backwards to avoid enemy attacks. So when the enemy attacks do not connect with you, so it's not even that you're blocking them, they're actually not hitting anything, they're just touching the air. That's what we refer to as whiffing. And what can happen is now, whilst the opponent is recovering from that whiff, you can now punish them. So that means attack them. And in certain scenarios you can even launch punish them off of that. So in green ranks, people really like to throw out a lot of moves even if they're whiffing a lot, but it's because they're not getting punished off of it that they keep doing it. So if you are in that category where you're doing that, you need to stop that immediately. And now you should also use it against your opponent, meaning that you need to see what kind of attacks they like to throw out, how those attacks end, so that you know when the string is finished, and then you need to look at your own character's attacks, which can bridge the gap. So for instance, let's look at Master Raven. To close the gap, she has 2-1. She also has down back 2-1. She has forward 2-3. And to whiff launch punish, she has forward 3 for a full combo. So what you need to do is go through your character and find out what moves bridge the gap, and list them from quickest to slowest, and start using them effectively to whiff punish your opponents. That about does it for all my top 5 tips on how to get out of green ranks. Just as a side note, do not waste your time learning 10-hit combos. They may be effective to varying degrees in the beginning, but sooner or later they become useless. And that time which you're spending, you could actually use to sharpen your fundamental skills or go through one of these 5 tips. So, thank you for watching this video till to the end. On my Jehuty Gaming channel, you of course find other guides and tips and tricks to help you out, so please check that out. Consider subscribing because that helps me the most. Leave a like and leave a comment with your feedback because that also helps me improve my content which I bring out. Anyway, I'll see you guys on the how to get out of yellow ranks video next, and this is your boy Jehuty, and I'm out.